Welcome to Book Chat. My name is Vikki J. Carter, and I am the producer of the podcast, Authors of the Pacific Northwest. And we are here to talk about the National Novel Writers Month, also known as NaNoWriMo. And I'm here with Becky Standal.
Hello.
And Jakob Collins. So we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences because we did NaNoWriMo kind of together. And so I'm going to ask Becky to share a little bit with us about what NaNoWriMo is.
Like you said, NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it takes place every year during the month of November. NaNoWriMo is a large organization that puts everything together. Their website is nanowrimo.org, and there are word counters and lots of support online for writers to reach the goal of 50,000 words during the month of November.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your experience and Jacob's experience. But Jakob, can you share how do people get involved with NaNoWriMo? Do they just get started? Kind of share with the audience a little bit about that.
So you can go to nanowrimo.org and you can sign up there. There's options and forums available to talk with other writers. Otherwise, you can just get started and just start writing at the November 1st, and then just go all the way through the rest of the month.
You don't have to do it with anybody else. You can do it by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think, isn't that what a lot of people do?
I think so. The first time I did NaNoWriMo, that's what I did. But I mean, I didn't get very far. I think it's nice to have the local support.
Yeah.
What's cool is you can put like your location in the website, and it'll show like all different people participating around you, any local events that are scheduled in your area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I also read, because this was my first year doing NaNoWriMo as well, I'd heard about it for years and finally got the guts to do it. And I read that there's two ways of participating. So there's the original NaNoWriMo where you commit to the 50,000 words, which felt like a lot to start out with, but it ended up being okay for me. Or you could do the NaNoWriMo Camp. Did you see that about NaNoWriMo Camp? Can you explain what that was?
I don't know very much about NaNoWriMo Camp. I think that's something actually that they do periodically throughout the year.
Okay, do you know anything about the
I don't know.
Well, one of the participants that worked with us, and we'll talk a little bit about what we did together in the library, she mentioned to me that the camp part, you can select your own word count. You don't have to commit to the 50,000. I'm like, oh, should have known about that ahead of time.
Yeah, they also have like a special program for young writers, so it's like the word count isn't high. There's like a more less scary goal, I guess.
Yeah, and that's how I heard about NaNoWriMo years ago. My daughter, when she was in high school, a few years back, she actually participated in NaNoWriMo first. But I didn't have the guts then to say that I was even writing, so I wasn't going to participate with her. So let's talk a little bit about your individual experience. Okay, so I'm going to start with Jakob.
Okay.
So Jakob, tell us about this year's experience with NaNoWriMo. First, how far did you get, and what did you write about?
So I did 11,000 words through November, and what I wrote about was a variety of things. I'm really bad at sticking to one particular project, and so I jump around from thing to thing. But the primary thing that I worked on was an idea for magic that I had, just a setting where magic is sort of the norm rather than something crazy or fantasy. It's just the way that things are.
Well, that's cool.
And so it's just kind of an exploration of a main character who's learning how to use magic in a world where magic is mundane, and it's kind of an exploration of that. And then I just did a bunch of other short stories, some horror, some romance, some comedy.
Oh, so it doesn't matter. It's just about the word count, right? You can write on several projects and just write in November. Is that kind of the process?
I think the spirit is to fully write a novel, but I don't tend to follow the rules. So. Glenn sat with his feet up on the table, a glass of whiskey within arm's reach. He glanced over to the table next to him longingly. 4 sailors in their blue and black coats rolled dice and concealed them with their cups, each eyeing the others, looking for tells. Liar's dice from the looks of it. Not his game necessarily, but it was still better than what he had planned for today. As Glenn watched the sailors play their game, he heard the familiar heavy creak of the oaken door to the drunken kraken playing. Turning his head, he watched as a trio of men entered the tavern, all wearing the same gray trench coats with gold trim. That must be them, Glenn thought, and he gave them a wave. All 3 reacted about as he thought they would, a cocked head, a raised eyebrow, or a forced smile. It was to be expected given his appearance. Oi, who's the geezer? The one on the left asked his companions, and the 3 sniggered. "Hey, old man, we're looking for a bounty hunter, not some raisin." He laughed hard enough that his brown and broken teeth were visible even from where he stood. Arglen sighed and crossed his arms. "You're talking to him." His voice was flat, low, and loud as he said this, projecting through the mostly empty tavern. The talkative ones sneered, but the three made their way forward next to his table. As they got closer, they noticed Zed, Arglen's Rottweiler, sleeping next to his master's feet. "Gods," one of them murmured. They each got a little more timid now that they saw the Goliath of a dog. Good. Arglen heard enough jokes about his age to last a lifetime, a long lifetime. "Rigney," Arglen shouted, "how about a few beers for my friends here?" A few seconds later, and some labelless bottled beers were placed in front of each of the men. "So do you have a job for me or what?" The one in the middle ran a hand through his greasy black hair, pushing it out of his face. "We got a job." "Then let's hear it," Arglen interrupted. He raised his whiskey glass to his lips, downed the rest of the drink, and then turned it upside down on the table. He gave a smile to the others and leaned back in his chair. "You ordered the hooks," Arglen nodded, so the man continued. "Then you know there's 6 sons of bitches. One of them took a hammer to 2 of my best men's knees last week. Cripples for life now, the poor bastards." "So you want revenge now, is that it?" "Nah, justice." "Justice?" Arglen scoffed. "You should know there's no such thing as justice in this city. Some guy hurts your buddies, you hurt some of his buddies, and then they hurt your guys again, and the whole cycle repeats. It's a fool's errand, don't waste your time on it." The mouthy one turned red with anger and looked like he was about to yell, but the leader silenced him with a look. "You got it all wrong. I don't want you to hurt him. I want you to arrest him." Arglen grinned and scratched his trim beard. "I'm no blue. If you want an arrest, go talk to one of them. Those blues won't do shit unless they get something out of it. All them hooks are wanted men, but the blues know that if they fight them, they'll lose, and they ain't gonna risk their hides for that. You deliver one of them hog-tied to the jail, and they arrest him for sure. That's the job. You in or what?" "How much?" 6, 16, 8, 12, 10. "Done," and they shook on it.
How about you, Becky? What did you accomplish, and then tell us a little bit about what you wrote during the time.
So I stumbled like into week 2. I got really distracted by something totally unrelated to NaNoWriMo, and it just like took over my mind. So I got to about 15,000 words.
Well, that's still very good.
Yeah.
I think you guys both did fantastic.
And when I decided, so in October, I did Inktober this year. Are you familiar with that?
No, share with us what you.
So Inktober is like a drawing challenge.
Oh, okay.
And they have different prompts for every day, and you just like draw every single day. And I think it's mostly through I just did it through Instagram. I don't really know about the origin of this thing, but I finished it, and I was like, well, if I can finish this, I can do NaNoWriMo. But it was harder to write than it is to just draw like a little doodle. Yeah. But I decided that if I was going to do it this year, I'd want to pick a project that was just really fun and lighthearted, that I didn't have to worry about being like important or, you know. So I started working on like it's a romance novel that's also a spoof of romance novels.
Oh, I like this idea.
Yeah, so it's fun. It's fun to get like super cheesy, but it's about a librarian who gets a year contract job to work at one librarian, while the librarian is on a maternity leave. And so she moves to the small town, and then it turns out that everyone there's like primarily function in life is to just set people up with each other. And she just is like, this is crazy and I'm not going to be a part of it.
I love it.
Suddenly, the marching band stopped playing. The parade had stopped moving, but it wasn't unusual for parades to stop and start. It was clear after a moment, though, that the silence from the band wasn't because of a regular pause or transition between songs. Emily glanced over at Georgia. Her face was the picture of glee. A man broke off from the throng of spectators and leapt onto the May Queen float. Georgia let out a quiet squee of delight. "Allie Fitzpatrick," the man said. His voice was amplified like he was mic'd up, but when Emily glanced around, she didn't see any speakers. "I was a fool to let you walk out of the office last month. You were right. That deal with those developers was a setup. I didn't sign the papers." "Is this a play?" Emily whispered to Georgia. "Shh." Georgia held her hand up to silence Emily. Allie Fitzpatrick also had her hand up. It was covering her mouth in a delicate but flabbergasted way. I talked to Bill about your idea, the man continued, and he thinks it's genius. We're going to go forward with it no matter what because it's a great idea. But what would make it perfect is if you would go in on it with me, be my partner in business. Here, the man got down on one knee, reaching into his pocket for what must be a ring box. And in life, he popped that box open. Emily heard someone whisper behind her, "Is she crying? I can't tell if she's crying." Allie Fitzpatrick, the proposing man went on, "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Allie Fitzpatrick answered, her voice also amplified in some way so the whole crowd could hear her. As she wrapped her arms around the neck of her new fiancé, the town of Silent Sound erupted into cheers and applause. Beside Emily, Georgia sighed, "Oh, I love a May Day parade proposal."
So I'll tell you a little bit about my project that I ended up working on. So it was my first NaNoWriMo experience, and I was terrified, I'll be honest with you. And so I did make it to 50,000.
Good job.
Nice.
And I was very obsessed with it, so I'll be honest with you. And I've worked on my first novel. So my goal this year, or last year going to this year, was to actually publish a novel. But I had bits and pieces. I didn't have the full novel, like the first draft written. So I got 50,000 words towards that draft. And it's around a gal named Annabelle, but she's in the Elizabeth I era, so around Elizabeth I, but she's not in the court. It's an individual that's not around wealth. And we're following Elizabeth through her life and her decisions. So I was pretty excited. Now we're in edit stage, which is a lot of fun. So. The decision. The next hour, my head was in a fog. My breathing slowed to a threatening speed of death. I choked back tears with each moment. I listened to Elizabeth breathing as she was unaware of my presence in her room. Sitting in the far corner, I waited for some sort of guidance to drop into the haze of my mind. What was I to do? When dawn finally arrived, what was I to say to Elizabeth? What would I tell my grandfather? And how can I explain? I could not, I willed that I should not, and so I did not. I rose from my seat early enough to escape the idea of remembering why I had come to Elizabeth's room. I closed the door silently. She never woke. She never will know the heartbreaking night I suffered soaking in her peaceful sleep. Okay, so let's talk about writing schedules, because, or kind of how you processed even trying to get, I think 11,000, 15,000 words is an accomplishment. Any amount of words is an accomplishment, because they don't know this yet, but you guys also work. And so writing and working and all that kind of stuff is busy. So Jakob, share with us kind of a little bit about how you set up so you could find the time to write.
So I basically just scheduled myself to work. When I got home from work, I would just, that would be the first thing I would do when I would get home. I would just get on my computer and I would just start writing. Mm-hmm. And then I would just kind of write until I felt like I needed to do something else.
Yeah.
So that was that worked for me, and I've continued doing that schedule when I've into the further month. I wrote 15,000 words in December.
Oh, good.
To add on, so I've continued it, and I think that's kind of the spirit of NaNoWriMo too, is just writing. So.
Awesome. Good job. How about you, Becky?
Pretty similar, just like in the evening after work.
Yeah. I didn't have a schedule starting out in NaNoWriMo. I didn't have a writing routine, and I had interviewed up to this point for the podcast authors, so that's what my podcast is about. And every one of my authors were talking about routine, but I never really set myself a schedule. So I set aside NaNoWriMo to be my time to dedicate to finding my writing time. And I floundered for a while. But I discovered that after everybody's asleep in the house and everything's quiet, so I'm a late night writer. And I was ending up writing for a couple of hours each night before I was too exhausted. Yeah. And so that was really beneficial to find that time, because I didn't have it up to that point. So, and I continued it like Jakob, so good job. How about you? Have you continued?
No.
That's okay. You can back up.
Yeah, I think when I have gone back, it's been on the weekends. So yeah. If I talk to someone else who's writing, I'll be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That makes me feel like I should be working on mine.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I definitely haven't established a routine.
Yeah. It's hard. It's very hard. That's probably the one thing people don't realize, how hard it is just to get into the routine. So Jacob, what helped you during that time when you were trying to find your routine? What was your kind of inspiration besides NaNoWriMo, the challenge?
So writing is just something that I really like doing, and I think that just having an excuse to push myself to do more was really what helped me the most. And again, just having a schedule of getting home and doing it when I got home, just before I was kind of burnt out and doing other things.
Yeah.
Just I was making time, setting time aside in my schedule to do it.
Yeah.
And that was what was, most important for me, I think.
Good, I like it. I like it. How about you? What was your most important part about it?
The word tracking, I think, is
word count?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like every day. Like you were saying, you were setting aside like a certain amount of time. I just had my eye on that number, and
Yeah.
like when I get that number, like then I can stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can finish, like my paragraph or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
or keep writing if I
Yeah.
feel like it. But having like a daily goal was cool. And on NaNoWriMo, if you put your word count in every day, it links like a nice graph for you.
Yeah, they
And
give you little badges.
Yeah.
Badges. It's like rewarding.
yeah,
Yeah.
But it's nice to see like the progress in like a graphic.
Yeah, it is. So NaNoWriMo is very good about making sure you get instant gratification, and that was very helpful for me. I tend to shy away from word count. Word count distracts me, and so when I was going into NaNoWriMo, I did a lot of searching. How many words a day do I need to hit the target, right? So I did the whole search, and I found out it was a certain amount of words, and I'm like, I'm never going to get that far. There's no way I'm going to do that every single day. What was fascinating was I did, and then it was great because I've always fought against word counts because it felt like it was killing my creativity, but I found that I was motivated by it
Yeah.
each day. And then NaNoWriMo gives you little badges that you
Yeah.
can see, you did this.
Years ago, the first time I tried to do NaNoWriMo, I went to like a introduction, welcome-y thing down in Vancouver at one of the libraries there, and the people who coordinated it had been doing NaNoWriMo for like a really long time, and they were talking about their experiences and stuff, and they were saying how when they're trying to get to a word count, if they can't think of anything to say in their story, they'll just type whatever. And I was like, that's kind of like cheating though. But I think part of that for me was just like kind of getting over the idea like that Nano's like, the spirit is just like to write and to keep writing and to keep going and to build a habit.
Yeah.
So that's not cheating because that's not the point, I guess.
I'll tell you my panics that I had right at starting that. So if you know me, and you guys are getting to know me, those that know me know I'm very competitive. I'm competitive with myself. I'm competitive with everybody. And so the very first day NaNoWriMo launches is November 1st. And I got into NaNoWriMo's Facebook group, because I'm like, I'm going to follow people, this is great. And on the 1st, there was already people that had already finished the 50,000 words. And I'm like, instant panic. I'm like, how did they do this? And I started to feel really bad about myself. And then I'm like, I got to just realize this is not a competition. Absolutely not a competition. So that was my experience going into it at first. And then I had to readjust to whatever you can get done is important, and just keep writing. So great. So what were some obstacles? Did you have any obstacles with the experience this time around for you?
I felt like it was, when I would miss a day because I had other things going on, or when there was just really no time to write, I would feel a little bit discouraged with, oh, I missed a day, I'm already falling behind, I'm already failing,
Yeah.
And, but it was just pushing through it and realizing that even if I miss a day or a couple of days, I'm probably not going to win. That was kind of what I had in my mind from the beginning, was I'm not going to reach 50,000, but I want to put my best effort into it. I want to do as much as I can.
That's good.
And I was pretty proud of 11,000 words given the fact that we had other things going on.
Yeah, you guys really did. If you're talking about what I think you're talking about,
Yeah.
you guys really had some distractions going on. So how about you?
I think we can just be candid and say that during November, the library was facing, potentially it ended up being less drastic, but this big budget cut, and it was just a very stressful time for everybody who worked at the library.
Which you don't do, because I neglected to introduce that part.
And it got very distracting, and ultimately that's why I was like, I'm just not going to do NaNoWriMo anymore.
Yeah.
Especially since I'm writing about a library and a librarian, it was just like creeping into it just wasn't as fun as I.
Too mad.
I was like,
too much going on.
so that was, But I think Jacob's point too about getting discouraged, if you like miss a day is a big.
But here's the classic thing about writer's life in general. A writer really goes through these ups and downs and battles, and I think NaNoWriMo is a great little version
Like a
of
little
that.
snapshot of,
right?
yeah.
I mean, we never know what we're going to have come down the pike in November. You know, what I was thinking about, why would they start NaNoWriMo in November with Thanksgiving? I mean, like, the busiest.
But then you do kind of have like some non-work days.
Exactly. Well, yeah, who writes on their non-work days for Thanksgiving? I don't know. But it's really a good example of, you know, if you can even write a little bit during those heavy-duty times in your life, you're a success. And so you guys just show that you're a success in a very heavy-duty emotional time of your lives, because the library was definitely up with some challenges at that time. We can understand being distracted during that. So very good. So what did you find valuable during the time?
As I kind of already mentioned, I found what was valuable was like just building a habit, getting back into writing, because I had kind of gotten out of it for a little while, and most of that was I had a computer with all of my writing on it, and as I was backing up my files onto a flash drive or a terabyte hard drive, it crashed and I lost all of my writing. It was 3 years worth of writing, and it was like when I was backing it up. So that really just took me out of writing for a couple of years, and I was just like, I'm done with this, I can't do it. And NaNoWriMo has really helped me get back into it. It's just kind of building up the confidence again, building up my love of it again, and just kind of getting back in the habit of, you know, breaking this long period of this dry spell.
It is.
And it was terrible.
It's actually horrifying.
It really is.
But I'm so glad you're back, because I can understand that feeling. I lost a journal once and I was devastated, you know, all that months of writing, but I can't imagine the whole, so.
It makes me think of like in Little Women when Amy burns Joe's manuscript.
Yeah, exactly.
She doesn't understand what she's done.
Just don't. Yeah, so. How about you? What was the most valuable for you?
I think stuff like this is like talking to other people about it, and like I've been writing, you know, since I was like little, but not always, but like a lot of it has just been like really like private for me, and so I didn't really talk about it very much. And it's nice to talk about it with other people who are writing, and also other people who are like, oh yeah, I'm also like secretly working on this project.
Agent writer.
Yeah. So like what you were saying earlier when you were like really afraid to do it, I definitely feel that too, and it's nice. It's kind of a nice way to get past that.
Yeah, I loved it too, in the sense that I met you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about our connection, and how NaNoWriMo really brought the three of us together. And also it really forced me to say, I'm chunking out this month for writing, and I stopped producing the podcast for the whole month, which is huge. I stopped interviews for a whole month. I almost stopped life for a whole month except for writing, which I couldn't, because I still had to work. I couldn't put in a month's vacation time, darn it. I would have loved to, but it really helped me to be intentional about the fact that, you know, my goal is to be a published writer, and NaNoWriMo gives me the excuse to set everything else aside that I don't need to do and be intentional about it. But the most important value that I really did have was connections that we made in the community. So we're going to talk, that segues into what happened with the library, which was really exciting. In the midst of some very challenging times for the library opened up the doors to us, NaNoWriMo. So I forgot to explain that Becky is actually our youth service librarian specialist in the Longview Public Library, and Jakob is one of our technical service librarians at the Longview Public Library. And so tell us a little bit about what you guys did for the library and what we called it, and then we can go into there a little bit.
When we were putting together like our suite of programs for the fall, I said that I think it would be really cool if we did something for NaNoWriMo this year. And we brought it up at like a youth services meeting. And then I talked to Elizabeth, who's our adult services librarian, because it is like a program that both youth and adults can do, but in our case, only adults did. Yes. And I said, let's like sit down and like brainstorm about stuff we can do to support the writing community. Alan had done with some other writers like a whole series of writing programs earlier in the year that had been like incredibly successful. Yes, and so she was like, okay, I'm gonna call Alan, and then Alan contacted you. And then
my way into the situation, trust me.
And so we sat down and talked about what we could do, and decided we would do a happy hour. no alcohol, because it's at the library.
Yes, we can't drink right at the
Just, you know,
library.
like tea and snacks,
Yeah.
and just have a block of time where people could come and work on their books and connect with other nanowers.
So what was some of the, so to recap, what happened was, so we had it, I can't remember the times, what was it, Jacob? We did it from 4, was it 2 to 4?
It was 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
During happy hour time.
Yeah, that's right, well, 4 to 6 on Tuesdays, every Tuesday for the month of November. You guys dedicated a room for us writers to come together. And we had a pretty darn good turnout.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed with it. And so, and Jacob, you guys got to pop in every once in a while. You guys were working, so you didn't get to actually participate. But what you guys did do, we did some good warm-ups in the beginning to get everybody kind of comfortable with each other. And then it kind of developed into, we weren't sure how it was going to work out. It was one of those things where, how do you do this? There's no blueprint for having hosted events with NaNoWriMo, or you just wing it. And we found that most of the group wanted to sit and write and try to get some word count in. And then there's a section of groups of people that wanted to discuss their work. And so that we found out ways to kind of
To meet both
needs, as best as we could. So it was a really great event, but we also got connected. So I got connected with you guys, which was absolutely fun. And then I got connected with a lot of other writers, budding writers, seasoned writers, amazing writers in the area. And then we had an event at WordFest that you guys were able to come and participate in, and we showcased some of the writers, and we did some readings. So it was very, very good. From the library standpoint, how do you feel about that event? Do you guys feel it's successful? Would it be something we can consider next year, do you think?
I would like to think that we would consider doing it again.
Yeah, what's cool about it is it did bring people into the library. I think that didn't really come there very often. Like I did ask at the beginning, like where people had heard about it, and there were a couple of people who said that they'd heard about it from the NaNoWriMo website, where they posted it as an event that was happening, which was really cool, and that they've continued to be involved. Like there are some, I noticed at the self-publishing workshop this last Tuesday. So that was really great. And it really, it's like has a nice return for the library for like not really requiring like a ton of work.
There wasn't a lot of investment for the library.
No, it was really,
and you guys offered cookies and goodies.
and just a little bit of our time, like saying hello and having people introduce themselves to each other.
It was a fantastic event. So thank you so much for hosting it.
And I'd say we'd had about 10 or 15 people every week.
Yeah, we did. At least 10 or 15. And then I've stayed connected with quite a few of those through Facebook, and I have seen them come to events in the community. So that it was a great event, and we will hopefully get it next year. So great. So what would each one of you, what would your recommendations be for anybody that's now considering NaNoWriMo for this next November? What is your maybe 2 or 3 recommendations for them? We'll start with you, Jacob.
Okay. So my first recommendation would be that, set realistic expectations. If you have a really busy schedule and you have a ton of things going on in your life, you might not hit the 50,000, and that's okay. Maybe set your own goal for what you think is going to be reasonable given your time and schedule. So that'd be the first one. And then the second one would be then kind of in reverse, I guess, would just be make time in your schedule to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
It's like, you can't, you're not going to be writing and getting things done if you just continually put it off. So you have to make time, and it's so easy to put things off if you don't have it scheduled. So I think a set schedule really helps, at least help me.
Good. Awesome. How about you, Becky?
I'd say if you don't know, go to the Nano website and check it out. I think what's really encouraging and inspiring for me is to see the list of published Rymos. Some of my one of my favorite books is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. She wrote that book during National Novel Writing Month. There's lots of big books that started with this. So I think that's really inspiring, and then tell people that you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I would say, my biggest advice is to be intentional and say first you're going to do it. Commit it to yourself, put it on your calendar, and then commit it to everybody around you for support. And I made mine very public that I was doing it, so I couldn't get away from it. But I think that it's a valuable month to really get into the craft of writing and the exercise of writing often and daily. So fantastic. Well, thank you, Becky and Jacob from the Longview Public Library, and now my writing friends from NaNoWriMo. And we really hope that we have inspired you to participate this next coming year in November for NaNoWriMo, and we look forward to seeing you at maybe our NaNoWriMo happy hours at the library. So thank you so much.